favourite spots I've been. It's fantastic. And that's what I'm hoping to achieve. If I can achieve a bit of that in, doesn't matter if you're long-term type 1 or you're quite new to it, if I can encourage you, that's what I want to do. So that's me a few years ago. I was born a horribly long time ago. I feel really old. And that's me when I was diagnosed. You can see I look pretty miserable. I was a very smiley, cheery kid, apparently, sickeningly so. And that was me. I didn't look right. And that's the date of my diagnosis. I found that out. My sister found it in my mum's diary, which was a very touching read. I was very lucky. Does anyone recognise this guy? I was very lucky to be put under his care. Dr. R.D. Lawrence. He almost died from type 1 in the early 20s, no, 1920 I think it was, 1919. He almost died. He went to Florence to live his last days. He didn't want his family to see him withering away and dying. And that's the telegram he got from a colleague at King's College Hospital saying, come back quick, we've got some insulin, it works. First time I ever showed that, we had laughter. I couldn't believe it. I thought, gosh, what's it? But I can see what the funny side of the statement. It was a particular honour. I've had 2 medals. They're both here on the table behind me. The Nabarro medal was the first one, fantastic guy again, and the second one was R.D. Lawrence, the medal there. So I was particularly chuffed with that. You can see that language mattered to him. The way he talked, he was. That's a typical letter that was written to a consultant in East Africa when my family went back to Kenya. And I think just, the way he talks, what's he say? This certifies a little Peter Davis, just that word put in. It's rather nice, isn't it? But he was a lovely, lovely man. So has type 1 management changed? I've got a lot of old gear behind me here, and it certainly has, my goodness. That, I can't be certain, that I think was the first kit that my mum would have had to use on me when I was 2 years old. That needle is 1.25 inches long, 28 millimetres, and that was the standard kit of the day. It was the best tech of the day, and that was what you got. Shorter needles didn't exist. And the kit leaked. We used to use methylated spirit, not just surgical spirit, methylated spirit, and it used to leak like a sieve, it would smell, it was horrible. And there it is, that's the assembled syringe, the glass syringe, which I've got behind me. Any idea what the wires are for there, those little strands of wire?
Keep it patent, stop it blocking.
The needles were used many, many times over.
Keep it patent.
And you had to just put the needle through the middle just to make sure they didn't get blocked. Seems extraordinary now, doesn't it? You use a new needle every time, do you? But just to give you a difference, that's a modern, I think that's a 6 millimetre needle, and that's what we used to have to use. Extraordinary, isn't it, the difference, and so much thicker. So those things, when they came in, the insulin pen were, I loved it. It was just life-changing, absolutely incredible. And I'm now using, that's what I'm using now. I'm looping with the Omnipod 5 and loving it. I think it's great. So I've only been on it since May. So I say guesstimating blood sugar, and we never had any idea of blood sugar accurately. That was the kit we used to have to carry around. And you used to have to test urine, that was all you had. The only people that could test blood were the hospitals, and you'd get a result a day later, kind of thing, when you phoned in. That flame, originally, we had to test urine over a naked flame, and we didn't have a gas cooker in Nairobi, so my dad, bless him, he manufactured that little lamp, which I've got here. I treasure that, and it still works. And the jam jar, well, you peed into it. That's what you did, and you tested your urine, did a little experiment. And here's the recipe: 5 drops of urine, 10 drops of water. You dropped a tablet in, and the whole thing boiled. And I've had many burns from when I've tested urine, and that you got one of those beautiful colours. Orange represented an extremely high blood sugar, very high blood sugar. But interestingly, blue was the low, was also a danger area, because you could be anything up to 0 millimoles per litre. It could be absolutely rock bottom. up to about 10.5 apparently. So I was always told I should aim to be in the green region, slightly above 10.5. It sounds extraordinary now, doesn't it? Absolutely extraordinary. Because you just didn't know what the blue was like. The other thing about it, you imagine a child had been asleep 8 to 10 hours, whatever. You could have had a blood sugar of, I don't know, 20 millimoles at the start of the night. You could have then gone hypo. And the reading you'd get in the morning when you took a urine test was somewhere in the middle. So it was very, very inaccurate, really. And it was always out of date, because obviously the sugar takes a while to get into the urine. So it was a pretty hit and miss affair. But we weren't stressed. We weren't stressed. We just thought, well, let's get on with it, make the most of life. And that's what I've applied throughout. And you couldn't really get any warning of upcoming hypos, because you didn't know whether the blood sugar the urine sugar was going up, down, whatever. So there are the colours. It was all a bit of a mishmash, but it was the best tech we had, best technology. These things came along, these test strips for blood and, well, originally for urine, but for blood as well. We were encouraged to cut those in half to save money. Yeah, which is amazing. I forgot to bring that. I meant to bring it. It's a finger lancing device, which is quite gruesome, really. But that was one. I've taken that on my expeditions because you don't lose strips. They don't fall out. They don't blow away in the wind, etc. I've used one of those. I'm currently using the G6 with, as I say, with my looping, and love it. Some interesting kit. I've got one of those big guns. My parents got it for me, bless them, when I was about 7 years old, and I used it once, and it was so fierce, it frightened the living daylights out of me. So a few years ago I bought another one, and it reminded me of the horrible feeling. The little one at the front there, that's it enlarged, was an American one, which was much neater. Without the internet, I don't know how my mum and dad actually managed to get these things, you know? It seems extraordinary, but there was no internet back then. And that lot fitted into that little kit. The one I had was smashed to pieces, so once again I got onto eBay, and I found that in the United States and bought it, and it's in beautiful condition, it's here. And again, it's brought back lots of happy memories as well as some painful injections. That is, you know what a normal insulin pen looks like? Well, that's another version of it. But not many people have seen those. But it had a record of how much insulin you had and when you gave it. It was the first of its kind. And that was quite dramatic when that came out in I think it was in the early 90s. And they even had, I never had one of these, the one had a blood test meter on the lid of it. I think, what clever thinking, really. I do take my hat off to this lot. We are not waiting. I think they have done a fantastic job. The DIY loopers this group have put a lot of pressure on the insulin pump companies and the sensor people to get their act together and give us the hybrid closed looping system that we have now. And I think they've done a fantastic job. The first example of looping that I did was with the T-Slim, and I used that for 5 years. I used it out of warranty, but I loved it. But I'm now on to the, as I say, onto the Omnipod, and I'm loving that even more. Really, really good. Oh, that's just one of my days. So is type 1 much easier to manage with modern tech? Yes, in lots of ways, but it always gives you that worry. I haven't got that straight line. As a friend of mine says, the only time you'll get a straight line is when you're dead. It always fluctuates. It always fluctuates. But and I keep reminding myself that for someone without diabetes, their time in range is about 75% to 80%, I think. So why are we beating ourselves up when we're sort of in the 80-90% region? We shouldn't be. And I think we do get too stressed, and I think that's one downfall of technology. I think technology is fantastic. We've got to be careful of it. Has it stopped me doing much? Now this is a bit I always feel a bit awkward about, because I hope this doesn't sound like me showing off, you know, I've done this, I've done that, etc. I'm showing it really to encourage people to think that don't let it ever stop you doing something. So it all started when we left East Africa. My parents, I think, were very brave taking me back to East Africa. the care there was not as good as you get obviously in London area. But we packed 6 of us with my grandmother and 3 kids into that little car. We drove all the way from Nairobi down to Cape Town, which is near on 5,000 miles on dirt roads and things. Pretty brave, a bit mad really. But how did they keep the insulin cool? How did they sharpen the needles? Because you didn't buy that many needles, they were very expensive, and you had to pay for them. So, you know, I think it was a pretty brave move. We had a great time, it was fantastic. And we came back, and my parents, by mistake, we went up Snowdon with my cousin, and this guy said, oh, that's the route, that's the big track up there, which is quite an easy route to go. And we ended up on Crwyd Goch, which is one of the most difficult routes, as you can see, that ridge you've got to go along. It was horrific. And bear in mind, I had no idea of blood sugar testing. I don't think we took a urine test along, I'm sure we didn't. But what my mum and dad did was give me a sweet every 20 minutes, which I really wasn't used to. I thought, this is heavenly, this is fantastic. But that just to keep the blood sugar up. If it was a bit too high, it didn't matter, at least I was safe. That was the attitude. But we made it anyway. My mum was absolutely terrified. I've done a little bit of motorsport. I've rallied cars. I've done a little bit of racing training, but it ran out of money, so I didn't go any further. But this was again on urine testing. We had no blood sugar testing then. But great fun. So it's not stopped me doing anything. I've got a lovely family with my eldest son and his wife, and my youngest son and his wife, my 2 eldest granddaughters, and little Lottie. Oh, where's little Lottie? Come back, Lottie. Press the wrong button. Little Lottie there, she's only 10 months old. And the reason I'm showing you that photograph is that, touch wood, there's no more type 1 in my family. I know some families are very unlucky and get hit badly, but thankfully not in mine, and I hope that's the same with all of you. I taught design and technology to up to 18 years of age, and we designed and made fantastic things. A career I loved, but it's even better being retired. So here we go. This is the start of the first trek I did was when I was I was 50, and I just some parents from school where I taught set up this charity for diabetes, and I thought, let's go and do it. So I would do something, raise money. So I walked from Winchester to Eastbourne, and it says there, and I did that in 6 days. Couldn't do that now, but it was great fun, and that was on MDI and blood sugar testing. And I had a couple of hypos, as we do. Nothing major. Managed it myself. And then came the next one. JDRF got to hear about. Probably shouldn't mention their name, should I? But JDRF got to hear about my first excursion, and they said, would I like to climb Kilimanjaro with 19 other people with type 1 diabetes? You bet I did. I couldn't wait to get up there, get back into Africa where I was born. And I think we still are the largest group of people with type 1 diabetes to summit. 18 of us made it to the top. We left for summit, I'm not showing you very much of it, but we left for the summit at 11 o'clock at night. And we walked for 16 hours that following day, so it's pretty grueling. The temperatures dropped to -13 or lower. So obviously we were very cautious of keeping insulin close to our bodies, so that it didn't freeze. I got to probably 500 meters of the summit. I looked at my Dexcom, my new Dexcom. First time I'd ever used a Dexcom or a CGM, and my blood sugar said 28. I thought, oh no, insulin's frozen. That was my initial reaction. But it was lovely having that safety. I knew if I gave myself a big correction dose, I've got plenty of space to catch it. So I did that. I gave myself a very generous correction dose. And on the descent down Kilimanjaro, I saw double arrows pointing downwards, and I cheered. I was so pleased, the insulin hadn't frozen. And when we got back to base camp, it had happened to about 5 others that their blood sugars had gone off the planet. And it's apparently something to do with the oxygen, your body not metabolising things properly. I don't know. I was talking to someone last night about it. It's quite a complex thing, and apparently people who don't have type 1 or don't have diabetes can be affected by their blood sugars can be affected by the lack of oxygen. So there we go. I don't know all the answers on that, I'm afraid. Just to prove I made it. There you go. And that's one of the most wonderful sunsets I've ever seen. You can actually see the curvature of the Earth from up there. It's remarkable. And that's the lovely group. Several people from different parts of the world as well, so an international group. So I decided to do, I got bugged then, and I decided to do something. I didn't climb to the top of that white bit, I promise you. But I decided to mark my 60th diaversary, as we call it. And I always celebrate my diaversary. Some people say, why do you celebrate something that's making your life so miserable? Actually, I'm just blooming glad I'm not 6 foot under when I was 2 years of age. I'm really glad that I've got this insulin. I'm really grateful for it. And let's make the most of life, you know? That's my attitude. So I go out, this is a kind of thank you. So we made it to the top of Mount Finnecunca, wonderful colours there. And I raised money for two charities there. And that's not all of that group. There were only about 12 of us went up, and not all of them made it to the summit, unfortunately. But it was a great team effort. But I only had one other person with type 1 diabetes walking with me, which I was a bit disappointed by. I wanted more. But there we go. Yeah, I don't even run to catch buses. But a friend of mine persuaded me to have a go at the Swansea Half Marathon on the hottest day of the summer of 2018, I think it was. And there was a group, I think there were 69 of us with type 1 diabetes who ran on that half marathon. And it was a fabulous experience. I took my time, I stopped and took photographs and listened to the steel bands playing and things. So I didn't rush my way around. I did it in 3 hours and 7 minutes, which is not very good. It's pretty pathetic, but I'm not a runner. I ran and I walked, but I wasn't last. And I did it twice. I did it the following year. And you'll notice a teddy bear there. Teddy bear will crop up more now. That teddy bear was lent to the group, and it was passed. Everyone with type 1 diabetes carried it a little bit of the way. I'll explain the significance of the teddy later. Just some thoughts about diabetes, type 1 diabetes. This guy was giving a lecture. I asked him if I could use his slide. And he says, you know, no condition requires so much continuous effort or deep understanding from the person with it. And I think that's right, we're managing it all the time, 180 extra decisions a day, someone's worked out. You know, it's a full-time job, isn't it? But I'm not complaining. Insulin is one of the deadliest drugs. It has to be treated very, very carefully, obviously. And the healthcare professionals expect us to know how to do it. They talk us through it, and they're very good at it. But actually, they don't know. I think my first consultant, R.D. Lawrence, knew what he was doing because he had type 1. But you know, the majority, they know it by theory, but it's very different when you're actually living it. And I think we do, excuse my language, but I think we do a bloody good job, don't we? Let's have a round of applause for type 1. Just a couple of personal thoughts. People often say that to me, and my polite reaction is that. My less polite reaction is that. I love that photograph of the Balance magazine. That was all we had back in the day. We didn't have social media. We didn't know other people with. I didn't know until I climbed Kilimanjaro. I didn't know anyone with type 1 diabetes. I know hundreds now, and I'm desperately trying to catch up. 58 years without knowing anyone else with type 1. It sounds quite extraordinary, doesn't it? Yeah, I mean, I've missed out big time, I think. But it's given me, it does give back. It does give back. I think it's given strength, not physical strength, but enormous positivity. As I say, I'm really grateful to still be here. And it's never stopped me doing anything at all. Not anything. I never want sympathy. I don't want people saying, oh, you poor thing, you've got type 1 diabetes, how awful. But I do want people to understand. I think our press is pretty bad at putting diabetes. It's almost a, if people looked after themselves better, they would get it. Well, it's just not true, is it? And to think of it, up till the 80s, I lived for over 30 years just urine testing, and suddenly I was able to test blood. That was quite a dramatic change. It was exciting when the HbA1c testing came through. I thought, wow, this is fantastic. But my goodness, if I drew a graph of the exciting changes that have taken place now, it would be a vertical line now. It's happening so fast now. And I'm really excited. I think it's a fantastic time. That sounds wrong, fantastic time to have. It's a good time to have type 1 diabetes. So, and lastly, this is the last bit of my talk, my next trek. I'm going there and I'm leaving next Monday. I've been diagnosed with Parkinson's as well, which is a real curse, but there we go. But I've never let type 1 stop me doing anything, and I'm blowed if Parkinson's is going to stop me doing anything, for as long as possible anyway. And we're going to Mount Toubkal in Morocco. We actually begin the hike on the 2nd of October. It's the highest peak in North Africa, and it's the highest peak in the Atlas Mountains we're going for. And that's the summit, that's the altitude we're going to. It's not as high as Kilimanjaro, but I'm a bit older now, so I'm brought down the altitude a bit. And 14 of us are going, and I've just worked out, I was working out last night, that we actually represent 336 years of type 1 will be climbing that mountain starting next Monday, next on the 2nd, whatever day that is. And I might sound a bit sad, but I thought the charity could make a big fuss of this. If I get there, I'll summit on my 70th birthday. So, there we go. It doesn't look quite so warm. The group, 12 of the group got together a few weeks back in Snowdonia, and this is me on quite a steep part of Rid Thi. That's part of the group. That's me clinging on for dear life. Apparently there's nothing quite like that on Toubkal. I hope not, because it's a lot further to fall. That's my sister. A very funny thing happened. A guy from Cornwall, he was late coming up, unavoidably. So he said, I'll walk up Rid Thi and you'll be walking down. And I came down, as we were coming down through the mist, I said, we'll have to call out to any guy walking on his own, are you type 1 Glenn? I said it in quite a loud voice. And out of the mist came, no, but I'm type 1 James. and all our jaws dropped, we couldn't believe it. And we spoke to this young guy who was walking with his dad. His dad was training to do Mont Blanc. And I said, another coincidence, he said, I said to him, where do you live? And he said, oh, near Clapham. And I said, oh, it's not far from me. He said, I spent the other half of my life in Nairobi. I said, no. So I must meet up with him when I've spent all my time organising the trek at the moment and being here. But we had a big party. We were exhausted. We had a big party at the end of the practice. Great team. So the teddy bear support. That is Tommy Teddy, who came with us to Peru. Donna Hall is a lovely lady. She has got 60, I think, nigh on 65 teddies going around the world. If children or parents get in touch and say, could you send us a teddy, she will do so. And the deal is you get a teddy for, I think it's 3 months, I'm not certain on that, and you keep a diary of what the teddy's been doing. So this one, she said, will you take him up to Toubkal? I said, yeah, rather. So we're going to take it in turns to carry him up and keep a diary of that. Interest of he's called Sugar. When sugar is passed on to the next person, they'll be able to read about the Toubkal experience and hopefully send a positive message out. So that's him having a bit of fun on the Peru. And this that's my 2 granddaughters and Sugar going out for a treat. And there's my eldest granddaughter with Sugar. So there we are. I hope you don't mind. I'm going to be very cheeky. I'll probably be shouted down, I can't do this. But if anyone's interested in sponsoring me, That is the link. By all means, photograph it or whatever, but fundraising is quite hard work. I'll leave it up there. So. But that's me over and done with. I hope you found that interesting, and thanks for being such a lovely audience. Has anyone got any questions? Anyone they want to ask? Anything they want to ask? No?
So you obviously lived abroad when you was born and everything, and
Yeah.
you obviously got parents that travelled the world or lived or didn't have good businesses or anything, or was educational. Is that helped you in your diabetes quest and how
Well,
you've lived? And
I should have mentioned this really, but my mother was a state registered nurse and midwife, so I was very lucky there as well. My father was a mechanical engineer, and they just happened to meet just after the Second World War. They met in East Africa, and we lived there until I was about 8 years old. Yeah.
okay.
Does that answer?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, there's another question behind.
I just wanted to say congratulations, because you are a prime inspiration for somebody that can go ahead in life and actually win in insulin chicanes despite all the challenges. I compliment you for your talk. I didn't get the whole thing, but I got the gist of the whole thing, and having had type 1 for 45 years myself and researched insulin myself for 30 years, you are an excellent ambassador, and I'm personally interested in the link to Nairobi because I spend a bit of time out there and I'm looking at all the genetic side of things.
Oh, right.
I think there's a genetic link possibly between families in the past, going right back to 1860, 1870 at the time of Addison disease, linked into diabetes, and also I'm discovering in my family heritage sort of potential genetic links, which I think would offer explanation of the immunogenic issues involved in the inheritance of diabetes through families. So thank you very much indeed.
That's a great pleasure. I'd love to have a chat about Nairobi and your thoughts, as you mentioned, later on. Is there anything anyone else wants to ask?
If you go on really long walks or hikes, how do you adjust your insulin or eat carbohydrates on daily deductions?
Right. Well, I haven't had a good experiment with the Omnipod that I'm using because it's obviously quite new. But what I did was set up a different basal profile on the last one and switched to that, and it seemed to work quite well. Although I found myself in Peru that I was giving myself as little insulin as I dare, and I was still going low. So it's a matter of taking on board fast-acting carbs. Take lots of them with you. And I think, I mentioned doing Snowden with a sweet every 15 or 20 minutes. I still apply that when I'm doing something of note like that, with really steep altitudes. So yeah, but I'll feed back once I don't know what I'm going to do with this yet. I've decided. Probably the same, I think. Yeah.
Pete, you know what? When you do your 2 carbs, right? Are you going to have links on your socials where you can follow you? And
Well, I think the easiest way of doing it, because I'm on different aspects of social media, is on the Just Giving page, just to update that try and update that every day if we can. But I'm also doing something for the Teddies to get the young families involved. So on Donna Hall's, the Insulin Gang, what's the other one called? Can't from me. Anyway, the Insulin Gang, there'll be a post every day on there. Yeah.
You mentioned that you used to be on the T1 Slim and now you're on the Omnipod and you prefer it. What is it that you prefer about the Omnipod?
I find the Omnipod is just a little bit more aggressive. I found that sometimes on the T-Slim you'd be high and you'd be sitting there for quite a long period of time. I'm finding that happens less now. But the T-Slim was great, don't get me wrong, I loved it, but it's just that little bit better, I think. A little bit. I should be saying that probably. I'm saying it.
The devices are available.
Yeah. No, I mean, I love the teaspoon. And the thing I particularly loved about it was unclipping it and just being able to read your blood sugar so easily. This is a bit of a curse. You've got a key in, you can't see it in the sunshine. It's a bit of a pain. So they all have their pluses and minuses. Yeah. But there we go. Thank you. Right, that all had enough. Well, I'm going to leave this out hopefully over lunchtime. If you want to come and look, there's some quite delicate old bits and there's some very sharp old bits. But do have a look. It's only Partha after this, isn't it? So don't stop upset. I don't mean it. But you know, you'd be welcome to come back and have a look after Partha's finished as well, if you'd like to. Thanks ever so much. It'd be lovely.